Your company locked us out. 7-year-old Zoe Carter sat on a rain-darkened suitcase, one hand gripping her purple inhaler, the other holding a wet notice toward the elegant woman in the cream trench coat. Malik stepped between his daughter and building manager Kevin Price as Kevin reached for the paper. The new lock flashed beneath "Home starts here." Rachel saw her company's blue doorway logo, and Zoe whispered, "My breathing machine is inside." 3 hours earlier, the rain had followed Malik's delivery van across town, tapping the windshield in uneven bursts while the wipers dragged tired arcs through the water. By the time he picked Zoe up, the cab smelled of damp cardboard, cold coffee, and the faint medicinal sweetness of the spare inhaler he kept in his delivery bag. Zoe climbed in with her yellow sweater showing beneath her purple coat and held up a drawing from school. A small house with 3 blue windows, smoke curling from the chimney, and 2 stick figures standing safely inside. "That's us," she said. Malik smiled, though his eyes stayed on the road. "Looks warm." She nodded. "I made the door big so we can always get in." At Riverside Gardens, the corridor lights buzzed above the wet concrete. Wind moved through the open side of the 3rd-floor walkway, lifting the corners of a promotional banner near the stairwell. "Home starts here," it read in clean white letters over Hearthstone's blue doorway logo. Malik carried the suitcase because the wheel had jammed again. Zoe walked beside him, counting doors beneath her breath. When they reached 3C, she stopped counting. The brass lock was gone. In its place sat a bright silver cylinder with untouched edges, too clean for the scratched door. Fine copper-colored shavings clung to the wet floor beneath it. A paper notice had been taped at Zoe's eye level. Malik set the suitcase down without a word. He tried his key once, slowly, then again. It would not enter. Zoe looked from the key to her father's face. "Is this our door?" "Yes." "Then why doesn't it know our key?" Malik peeled the notice from the damp wood carefully enough not to tear it. Across the top was Hearthstone's logo. Below it, access, restriction notice. At the bottom sat a small printed code, RSI 72. He reached into the clear plastic wallet inside his delivery bag and pulled out the rent receipt he had placed beside Zoe's spare inhaler the previous evening. The stamp was still visible through the plastic. Paid. Batch 318. He slid the receipt behind the notice and knocked on Kevin Price's office door downstairs. No answer. By the time Malik returned to the 3rd floor, Kevin was stepping from the elevator with a tablet tucked against his chest, polite concern arranged across his face. Behind him came a small production crew and Rachel Morgan, whom Malik recognized only as the woman whose van door he had repaired in the rain. Kevin spoke first. "Mr. Carter, this really isn't the place for a scene." Malik looked at Zoe, whose breathing had begun to shorten in the cold. "Then open the door." Kevin's smile tightened. "Your access has been restricted for non-payment." "I paid." "The system says otherwise." Malik held up the receipt. Kevin did not look at it. Instead, he reached toward the notice in Zoe's hand, and the moment snapped back into the image Rachel would never forget. The child on the suitcase, the inhaler pressed to her chest, Malik moving between her and a man with keys. Rachel caught the paper before Kevin could take it. Her eyes moved over the logo, the wet ink, the payment receipt behind it, then stopped at RSI 72. "Why is an internal risk code printed on a resident notice?" she asked. Kevin answered at once. "RSI is only an accounting flag." Rachel's gaze lifted slowly from the page. She had never told him what RSI meant. Rachel's gaze lifted slowly from the page. She had never told Kevin what RSI meant. "Who entered this code?" she asked. "The system did." "Who reviewed it?" Kevin adjusted the tablet against his chest. "Regional compliance." The corridor hummed beneath the fluorescent lights, every fixture casting a thin yellow sheen over the wet concrete. Rainwater gathered around Malik's work boots, carrying 2 bright copper shavings from the new lock toward the drain. Kevin tapped the screen and turned it toward Rachel, careful to keep it beyond Malik's reach. Red words filled. The resident profile, non-payment, hostile contact, manipulative use of minor, access restricted. "That isn't me," Malik said. Kevin's expression softened into the patient look of someone explaining rules to a difficult customer. Mr. Carter, these notes are generated from documented interactions. I understand that people often remember stressful conversations differently. Let me see the record. Resident access to internal safety notes is limited. Malik looked at the screen without leaning closer. His delivery jacket was dark with rain, the reflective strip across his chest catching the camera light each time he breathed. Beside him, Zoe sat very still beneath his coat, her fingers wrapped around the purple inhaler as though it were the only object in the hallway that still belonged to her. Kevin pressed a button and placed the tablet on speaker. Laura Bennett's voice arrived clean and professional, untouched by wind or cold. Rachel, I'm sorry you're seeing this during the shoot. We follow the same process with every resident. He has a paid receipt, Rachel said. An unverified printout, Laura replied. Cash payments require reconciliation. Until then, the ledger controls. Malik opened the clear wallet again. The plastic crackled in the silence. He set the receipt flat on top of the suitcase and placed Zoe's water bottle across one corner so the wind could not lift it. Paid. Apartment 3C. 5:14 p.m. Batch 318. He did not push it toward Rachel or demand that anyone believe him. Instead, he knelt and pulled the coat higher around Zoe's shoulders. Slow breath, he murmured. Watch my hand. Zoe followed his fingers as he opened them one at a time. Her breathing remained shallow, but her eyes stayed on him. Laura continued through the speaker. We also have a behavioral escalation note. Staff reported that Mr. Carter became hostile and attempted to use his daughter's medical condition to pressure management. Zoe looked up. Daddy didn't do that. Kevin lowered his voice as though protecting her. No one is blaming you, sweetheart. Malik's head turned. His face did not harden, but something in the air changed. Please don't speak for my daughter. Kevin gave a small nod. Of course. I'm only trying to keep this calm. It was calm until you read lies about her father in front of her, Malik said. No one answered. The rain struck the metal railing in a steady silver hiss. Somewhere below, the promotional banner snapped in the wind. Home starts her folding and unfolding against the brick like a promise that could not hold its shape. Rachel looked again at the tablet. Malik's file described a threatening man, but the man before her had not raised his voice, reached for the keys, or used his frightened child as a weapon. He had protected the receipt, protected the evidence, and then protected Zoe from believing the accusation was her fault. Where did the hostile contact note come from? Rachel asked. Laura paused. A resident call was analyzed and attached to the case. Play it. That may take time. Then send the file. Kevin shifted his weight. Ms. Morgan, with respect, this is becoming a privacy issue. The simplest solution is for Mr. Carter to contact the payment office tomorrow. Malik glanced at the locked door. Her nebulizer is inside tonight. Kevin's smile stayed in place. And I'm sympathetic. But restricted access cannot be overridden because someone presents a receipt after enforcement. After, Malik repeated. He looked down at the copper shavings beneath the lock, then at the time printed on the notice. Rachel noticed the change in his eyes. What is it? She asked. Before Malik could answer, an older man stepped out from beside the elevator. Henry Cole held his doorman's cap against his chest, his white hair damp at the temples. Mr. Carter was in the payment line yesterday, he said. Kevin turned toward him. Henry, you may not have seen the full transaction. I saw enough. His little girl drew a house on the back of a delivery slip while they waited. Zoe looked up from the suitcase. It had 3 blue windows. Henry nodded. That's the one. Kevin's fingers tightened around the tablet. A person standing in line does not prove payment. Rachel looked from Henry to the receipt, then to the untouched metal around the new lock. When was this installed? She asked. Kevin answered. After. Final authorization. Henry stared at the silver cylinder. That can't be right, he said quietly. I saw Kevin carry that lock upstairs before the notice was approved. I saw Kevin carry that lock upstairs before the notice was approved. Henry's words settled over the corridor with more weight than accusation. Kevin's polite expression barely moved, but his thumb pressed hard against the edge of the tablet. Memory can be unreliable during a stressful evening, he said. Rachel looked toward the bright silver cylinder, then back at Malik. You noticed the timing too. Malik did not answer immediately. He reached down, lifted the wet notice from Zoe's lap, and slid it carefully behind the clear plastic covering the paid receipt so the ink would not run any further. His fingers paused over the small RSI 72 code. Then his eyes moved to the cream-colored sleeve of Rachel's trench coat, where a faint black stain marked the cuff. For a moment, the cold corridor disappeared beneath the sound of rain striking the roof of a delivery van 3 hours earlier. Malik had been leaving the rear service lot after his final scheduled stop when he saw the van door swinging loose in the wind. A woman stood beside it with one hand gripping the metal handle and the other trying to hold a blue tarp over several cases of camera equipment. Water streamed from her hair onto her coat. The broken latch snapped against the frame every time the wind changed. Malik's phone vibrated against the dashboard. 2 deliveries remained. The school's aftercare desk had already sent a reminder that pickup ended soon. He looked at the time, then at the woman struggling alone. He pulled over. Hold the tarp, he said. I am holding it. Then keep doing that. The rain drummed against the van's roof, loud enough to swallow the next gust. Malik opened his delivery bag and removed the orange cargo strap he used to secure uneven boxes. The small steel hook at one end was the only piece narrow enough to fit through the damaged latch. He worked without explanation, shoulders bent against the wind, rain gathering in the seams of his navy jacket. The latch housing smelled of wet metal and old machine grease. One screw had stripped loose, leaving the catch tilted just far enough that it could no longer hold. Can it be fixed? The woman asked. Not properly out here. Then what are you doing? Making sure it doesn't open on the highway. Malik removed the hook from the strap, threaded it through the latch, and bent it into a temporary catch with the pliers from his small tool roll. He pulled the door twice, testing the weight. Then he looped the remaining strap through the interior handle as a second restraint. Behind him, the tarp lifted, exposing a camera case to the rain. Malik caught the corner before it blew free and drew it back across the equipment. He used his own delivery towel to wipe water from the case seals, even though the towel was the one he kept clean for Zoe when she ate snacks in the van. The woman watched him check each latch again. You're going to miss something, she said, glancing toward his phone as it vibrated a second time. Malik saw the school number on the screen. His jaw tightened almost invisibly. Probably. Then why did you stop? He folded the soaked towel and placed it beneath the weakest case where water had begun pooling. Because you needed help before I knew what it would cost me. The woman reached into her handbag and held out several bills. Malik shook his head. Take it. You've already lost work. Keep it. You've got equipment getting soaked. At least tell me your name. Malik pointed briefly to the faded badge stitched above his jacket pocket. M. Carter. As he reached past her to test the latch one last time, grease from his knuckles brushed the cuff of her cream coat. She looked down at the mark. Malik noticed it too. Sorry. It's only a coat. He gave a tired half-smile. Good answer. Then he returned to his van. He called the school before starting the engine, apologized without making excuses, and asked the front desk to tell Zoe he was on his way. Through the rain-blurred glass, the woman watched him drive off with the shortened orange strap hanging from his delivery bag and no idea that she owned the logo painted across the van behind her. Back in the corridor, Rachel stared at that same strap. One steel hook was missing. The grease mark remained on her sleeve. Kevin gave a quiet, dismissive breath. A roadside favor doesn't change a resident ledger. Rachel's eyes stayed on Malik. No, she said. It tells me why he deserves to be heard. The records will tell us whether he is right. Malik tucked the wet notice and paid receipt back beside Zoe's spare inhaler. I'm not asking you to trust me because I helped you, he said. I'm asking you to open the door because my daughter's medicine is inside. Rachel took out her phone and called Megan Shaw. Issue a legal hold, she said. Camera footage, access logs, payment records, maintenance requests, everything connected to apartment 3C. Kevin's face remained composed, but his hand stopped moving across the tablet. Less than a minute later, Megan called back. Rachel, the resident's access card was disabled at 6:18. Rachel looked at the notice again. Approval time, 7:05. The small kindness Malik had offered in the rain had not proved his innocence, but it had kept Rachel standing there long enough to discover that his door had been taken from him 47 minutes before the order to lock it existed. 47 minutes. The number hung in the cold corridor like a crack spreading across glass. The card was disabled at 6:18, Megan said through Rachel's phone. The notice says 7:05. Systems synchronized late, Kevin replied. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, bleaching every face into pale planes of worry and restraint. Beneath the new lock, the copper shavings had gathered in a thin crescent on the damp concrete, bright enough to look freshly cut. Rachel lowered the phone but did not look at Malik. A timestamp difference doesn't prove misconduct, she said. Her tone was measured, almost stern, as though she were warning herself not to let gratitude become judgment. Access logs can post before printed authorization. Maintenance events can also trigger temporary restrictions. Kevin nodded quickly. Exactly. There was an emergency water report. I disabled the card to protect the unit. Malik's eyes moved from Kevin to the locked door. He did not challenge the explanation immediately. He picked up the wet notice, held it beneath the corridor light, and placed his thumb beside the printed approval time. Then he looked at Rachel. What time was the water reported? It was a simple question. The production crew stopped shifting. Henry lowered his cap. Even the rain seemed to soften against the metal railing. Kevin glanced at the tablet. Shortly before 6:30. From which apartment? Malik asked. The unit below. Which one? Kevin's mouth tightened for less than a second. I would need to check. Zoe sat beneath Malik's coat, watching the adults without understanding the words on the screen. She touched the edge of the suitcase with one sneaker and said quietly, The floor was dry when we left. Malik turned toward her at once. You don't have to explain anything, sweetheart. I know, she said. I just remember because I dropped my blue crayon. The observation was small, exactly the kind a 7-year-old would keep when adults remembered policies instead of floors. Rachel's gaze moved to the bottom of the apartment door. There was no swelling in the wood, no dark waterline, no maintenance tape, no absorbent pads. The welcome mat beneath the threshold was dry except for the rain carried in from the walkway. Kevin shifted the tablet against his chest. The leak may have been inside the wall. We act before visible damage spreads. Then there would be a work order, Rachel said. There is. Show me. Kevin tapped through several screens. His hand moved with practiced confidence, but the tablet remained angled toward his body. Malik noticed. Can Megan see it directly? He asked. Kevin looked at him as if the question itself crossed a boundary. Internal maintenance systems contain private information. Then send the work order number, Malik said. No names, no private details, just the number. Rachel's eyes rested on Malik for a moment. He was not trying to control the room. He was narrowing it, removing every place an explanation could hide. Megan's voice returned through the phone. I can access the maintenance platform if Rachel authorizes it. Kevin spoke before Rachel could answer. That may not be necessary. I can summarize the entry. Rachel's expression changed only slightly. I didn't ask for a summary. She authorized Megan's access. For several seconds, no one spoke. The wind pushed the home starts her banner against the brick, making the plastic snap once, then fall still. Zoe's inhaler clicked softly in her hand. Malik crouched beside her and counted for slow breaths with his fingers, though each one sounded thinner than the last. I found the maintenance event, Megan said. Emergency water damage. Requested by K. Price at $6.29. Lock Core K. 4471 issued at $6.32. Rachel looked toward the silver cylinder. Who inspected the leak? There was a pause. No technician is assigned. Who called it in? Another pause. There's no caller ID, no resident note, and no attached photo. Kevin exhaled through his nose. The mobile app sometimes drops attachments. And the technician assignment? Rachel asked. Someone may have forgotten to close the loop. Malik stood. He did not look triumphant. He looked at the door, then at the 4 times now written in the dust on the suitcase with his fingertip. 6:18. 6:29. 6:32. 7:05. The card was shut off before the leak was reported, he said. Rachel stared at the sequence. Kevin had explained one inconsistency by creating another. Then Megan spoke again, more quietly this time. Rachel, there's something else. K4471 isn't a maintenance lock. It's listed as an external turnover core, the kind used when a unit is being prepared for a new tenant. An external turnover core, Megan repeated. The kind installed when an apartment is being prepared for someone else. Kevin's voice stayed level. That classification doesn't mean it was used for turnover. Then what was it used for? Rachel asked. Emergency access control. The corridor seemed to contract around the silver lock. The camera operator lowered his equipment without being told, and the soft whir of its cooling fan suddenly sounded louder than the rain. Malik looked at the door, then at Zoe. Her shoulders were rising too quickly beneath his wet jacket. Sweetheart, look at me. Zoe tried. Her eyes found his, but the breath she drew ended in a faint whistle. Malik knelt, one knee pressing into the cold concrete. He held up his hand and opened his fingers slowly. In with 1. Hold for 2. Out with 3. I'm trying. That's all I need you to do. He did not let his fear enter his voice. He had spent years learning which emergencies became worse when adults made them louder. Kevin glanced toward the elevator. Mr. Carter, paramedics can evaluate her downstairs. There's no reason to damage company property. Malik kept his eyes on Zoe. Her nebulizer is 20 feet away. Restricted access remains in effect. She needs medicine, and we need to follow procedure. Sophie Reynolds came through the stairwell before Rachel could answer, still wearing navy scrub pants beneath a gray raincoat. Henry had called her from the floor below. She crouched beside Zoe, listened to her lungs with a stethoscope warmed between her palms, then checked the inhaler dose counter. She's moving air, Sophie said quietly. But not enough. The rescue inhaler isn't giving her the relief she needs. Malik nodded once. The nebulizer's on the nightstand. Sophie looked at Kevin. Open the door. Kevin pulled the master key from his belt. The metal keys clicked together with a small, orderly sound, the kind that belonged to systems people assumed would work. He inserted the key into K4471. It stopped halfway. He tried another angle. The key scraped the face of the cylinder but would not enter. The hallway went still. Even Laura's voice had gone silent on the speakerphone. Kevin selected a second key. Failed too. Rachel lowered her tablet. Your master key doesn't fit. Kevin cleared his throat. Turnover cores use a separate sequence. You called it emergency access control. That is still accurate. Malik rose slowly. If it was for emergency access, why can't anyone here open it during an emergency? Kevin's mouth opened, then closed. Sophie's hand remained steady against Zoe's back. Henry stopped turning his cap in his hands. Somewhere in the building, an elevator bell chimed and no one moved toward it. Rachel looked at Megan. Document the lock before it's removed. Malik was already studying the door. Not like a locksmith, not like a hero waiting to show what he could do, but like a delivery driver accustomed to damaged hinges, jammed loading bays, and the difference between forcing something and preserving what happened to it. Photograph the whole frame first, he said. Then the serial. Then the shavings on the floor. Get the time on the same screen if you can. Megan raised her phone. Kevin stepped forward. We can handle that internally. Malik turned his head. Not after the handle failed. The words were quiet, but they stopped Kevin more completely than anger would have. Rachel nodded to Megan. Do exactly what he said. Henry returned with the building's heavy bolt cutters. Malik did not reach for them. He kept one hand around Zoe's fingers while Henry positioned the jaws. Megan photographed the untouched cylinder, the copper filings, the printed number K, 4471, and the wet notice still protected behind Malik's clear plastic wallet. Only after she said, "Recorded," did Malik move Zoe several feet back. The cutters closed with a hard metallic crack. Zoe flinched. Malik covered her ears a second too late, then whispered, "It's just the lock giving up." When the door opened, Malik did not look at Kevin. He did not enter to gather clothes, cash, or anything that could be carried away. He went directly to the bedroom nightstand, lifted the nebulizer and medication pouch, and brought them to Sophie. Rachel followed only as far as the threshold. The apartment smelled faintly of laundry soap and the cinnamon candle Zoe liked. The carpet was dry. The ceiling was dry. The wall beside the door showed no stain, no swelling, no opened panel, no sign that water had ever threatened the unit. Kevin stood behind her. The leak may have been contained. Henry looked down the hallway. By who? Nobody from maintenance signed onto this floor. Rachel turned. Her expression was no longer surprised. It was controlled. Kevin, your system access is suspended until the logs are preserved. Rachel, that could make this look worse than it is. Then the records should help you. While Sophie fitted the mask over Zoe's face, the small machine began its steady hum. Malik sat beside his daughter on the floor, his hand resting near hers but not gripping it. After several breaths, Zoe's shoulders lowered. She leaned against him. Are we home now? She asked through the mask. Malik looked at the broken lock on the concrete. We're inside, he said. Home takes a little more truth. Megan's phone vibrated. She stepped away from Kevin before answering, listened, then opened a payment report. I have batch 318, she said. The cash total matches the closing tape exactly. Malik looked up. Rachel's hand settled slowly against the doorframe. Then his payment was received. Megan's face tightened. Yes, but it was never posted to apartment 3C. She turned the screen toward Rachel. Malik's rent had not disappeared. It had been moved into a separate category labeled Unverified Cash Risk. Unverified Cash Risk. The words glowed on Megan's screen while Zoe's nebulizer hummed steadily inside apartment 3C. The money was received, Rachel said, but not credited. Megan enlarged the transaction line. Batch 318 closed without a shortage. Every dollar in the deposit matches the register tape. Then post it, Malik said. Laura Bennett's voice sharpened through the speaker. That category requires regional review. How long? As long as necessary. The hallway lights buzzed above the broken lock. Rainwater moved slowly around the copper shavings on the concrete, but the paid receipt remained dry inside Malik's clear wallet, resting beside Zoe's spare inhaler. Rachel looked toward the apartment. Zoe sat beneath a blanket while Sophie held the mask gently against her face. Her breathing had begun to settle, though each mechanical pulse from the nebulizer made the silence outside feel heavier. Why was paid rent kept out of the resident ledger? Rachel asked. Laura paused. Cash transactions create fraud exposure. RSI isolates unusual payment behavior until review. He paid cash 3 times in 6 months, Megan said. That is the behavior it flagged. Kevin shifted near the elevator. Many residents use cash to avoid traceable payment. Malik looked at him. Or because the grocery store cashes their paycheck after the bank closes. Kevin's eyes dropped briefly to the camera case on the floor. Malik could have demanded an apology. Then, he could have held up the receipt before every open apartment door and named Kevin a liar. Instead, he walked inside, adjusted the blanket around Zoe's legs, and lowered his voice. You feeling better? Zoe nodded behind the mask. A little. Good. Keep breathing. The grown-ups are fixing the paper. When Malik returned, Megan had opened the regional email archive under the legal hold. A message from Laura appeared on the tablet. Hold flagged cash outside resident ledgers until risk review is complete. Do not reverse without regional approval. Rachel read it twice. If the money stays outside the ledger, the resident appears unpaid. Temporarily, Laura said. And then RSI escalates the account, Megan replied. Another file loaded. Then another. Apartment 2A. Building 7, Unit 14. A senior complex across town. The same pattern repeated. Cash received. Payment moved to risk holding. Ledger marked delinquent. Access restricted. Malik leaned closer only enough to read the apartment numbers. How many? Megan searched the code. The tablet displayed 46 active or recently closed cases carrying RSI 72. Some showed lockouts. Others showed eviction warnings. Several had notes that residents had moved without contesting the debt. The hallway seemed to lose its air. Henry sat slowly on the edge of the broken lock box. Rachel's reflection appeared in the black tablet glass, divided by rows of names she had never seen. Malik pointed to one entry. Mrs. Alvarez in 2A uses cash. Henry nodded. She doesn't trust online banking. Call her, Malik said, before anyone sends another letter. Rachel looked at him. Your own record has not been corrected yet. She may think she did something wrong. He handed Henry his cracked phone. Her number's in my contacts under downstairs neighbor. Kevin gave a restrained sigh. This is becoming unnecessarily public. We should move the discussion to the office. Malik looked toward the open doors along the corridor. The locks were public. Megan's phone vibrated. She opened a text recovered from Laura's work account and read it silently before turning the screen toward Rachel. Clear all red units before cameras arrive. No alguacins. Laura's voice came quickly. Clear meant resolve. Kevin replaced a lock, Megan said. That is how he resolved this one. Kevin wiped rain from his forehead, though he stood beneath the roof. I followed the regional priority list. And who created the list? Rachel asked. No one answered. Megan opened the audit history behind the 46 files. Each case showed human review completed. Most approvals had occurred between 3 o'clock and 3:03 in the morning. Who was reviewing cases at 3? Rachel asked. Edward Sloan joined the call before Laura could respond. His voice was calm, older, practiced. RSI uses an administrative verification account to represent completed review. Megan enlarged the username.
RSI-admin-auto.
A server account cannot exercise human judgment, she said. It confirms that required conditions were met. By whom? Malik asked. Edward did not answer him directly. Rachel. This conversation should continue with counsel present and cameras off. Rachel's eyes moved to the equipment Kevin had repeatedly watched. She no longer looked at Malik with uncertainty. She looked at the evidence. Counsel is present, she said, and the footage is under legal hold. Megan opened the original RSI approval document. Rachel's signature appeared beneath language requiring a named employee to verify payment records and contact the resident before access could be restricted. Then Megan found the renewal package signed 6 months later. Buried in a financial appendix was Edward's memorandum. Manual review may be replaced by automated verification to improve portfolio efficiency. Rachel stared at her electronic signature on the final page. Edward had built the shortcut. Laura had turned it into policy. Kevin had used it on Malik's door. But Rachel's name had allowed the machine to keep moving. Along the hallway, residents stepped fully out of their apartments, no longer whispering behind half-open doors. Malik gathered the wet notice, the paid receipt, and the photographs of K-4471 onto his delivery cart. This can't be handled in a private office anymore, he said. Rachel looked at the 46 names on the screen, then at the logo on the notice in his hand. No, she answered. It has to be answered where it happened. By dawn, the third-floor hallway of Riverside Gardens no longer looked like a film set. Rachel had canceled the community campaign, turned the Home Starts Her banner toward the wall, and ordered the remaining equipment used only to create an official record, with each resident's consent. The camera faced the evidence, not the families. Laura Bennett arrived in a charcoal coat, carrying a leather folder against her chest. Edward Sloan appeared on a monitor beside the elevator, his office windows glowing with early morning light. Kevin stood near apartment 3C, separated from the tablet and keys he had controlled only hours before. Malik remained beside his delivery cart, exhausted, his damp flannel wrinkled beneath the reflective jacket. He did not look like a man arriving to win. He looked like a father who had stayed awake long enough to make sure the truth did not disappear. Inside the open apartment, Zoe sat safely beneath a blanket while Sophie monitored her breathing. She held Malik's clear plastic wallet in both hands, keeping the wet notice and paid receipt visible through the cover. Megan began with the paper that had started everything. Access Restriction Notice. Apartment 3C. RSI 72. She placed it on the cart. Then the receipt. Paid in full at 5:14 p.m. batch 318. Next came the access log showing Malik's card disabled at 6:18, the image of Kevin entering the elevator with the lockbox at 6:41, and the notice approved at 7:05. Laura waited until Megan finished. "The timeline looks troubling," she said, her voice soft and controlled. "But automated timestamps can reflect delayed synchronization. That does not establish intent." A murmur moved through the residence. For a moment, the explanation seemed possible. Systems failed. Clocks drifted. Mistakes happened. Edward leaned toward his camera. Exactly. A technical inconsistency should not be mistaken for coordinated wrongdoing. Megan placed K-4471 beside the photographs of the copper shavings. The master key could not open it. It was a turnover lock. "A classification," Laura replied. "Not proof of purpose." She almost had the room back. Then Malik spoke. "What was turning over?" The question was quiet. Laura looked toward him. Malik did not point at her or raise his voice. "My lease was active. My rent was in their cash bag. There was no court order. So what was that lock preparing my home for?" Laura's fingers tightened around the folder. Megan added the false water damage service log, followed by the empty caller field, the missing photographs, and the record showing no maintenance worker entered the floor. Kevin said he had acted under regional pressure. Laura said, "Clear the red units meant resolve outstanding cases, not remove families." Edward said RSI merely offered recommendations. Each explanation sounded polished until placed beside the next object. Then Megan opened Malik's behavioral file. This recording was used to label him hostile. A man's angry voice played from the speakers, demanding that a manager stop calling his workplace. Kevin lowered his eyes. Malik listened without moving. Zoe leaned toward the doorway. "That's not Daddy," she said simply. Sophie rested a hand on her shoulder. Megan displayed the metadata. The call came from another Hearthstone property, under another resident's account. The regional code had been matched incorrectly. And this phrase, Megan continued, highlighting manipulative use of minor, was generated automatically from the words daughter and medicine. "No employee interviewed Malik." No employee heard Zoe. The residents stopped whispering. The false file had not merely missed the truth. It had manufactured a character convenient enough to punish. Laura tried once more. "Then the appropriate response is a confidential correction while we investigate." A document appeared on Malik's cart: temporary restoration of access, removal of the balance, medical reimbursement, and a non-disclosure clause. Malik read only the final paragraph before setting it down. "No, this protects everyone while facts are reviewed," Laura said. "It protects the company while families keep thinking the file was right." Several residents began speaking at once, anger rising along the railing. Malik lifted one hand. "Let her finish. If we turn this into noise, they'll write down the noise and forget the evidence." The hallway settled. Rachel watched him differently now, not as a struggling tenant asking for mercy, but as the only person there refusing to let humiliation become revenge. She questioned them in order. Kevin admitted Laura had told him to clear flagged units before filming. Laura admitted cash payments were held outside the ledger to meet risk targets. Edward insisted the automatic review had been authorized through the renewal package Rachel signed. Megan projected Edward's memorandum removing named human review, then opened the final approval page bearing Rachel Morgan's electronic signature. Rachel did not look away. Malik faced her. When the name at the top is yours, who answers for the pages you chose not to read? Edward began explaining that the memorandum had been buried in a technical appendix. Rachel closed the tablet. He designed the shortcut, she said. Malik's voice remained calm. And your signature gave it a road. Rachel slowly removed the silver Hearthstone pin from her coat and placed it beside Zoe's rain-stained notice. Then she stepped in front of the recording camera as Megan opened the final audit file. The one showing every human review had been approved by a machine. The final audit file filled the monitor beside the elevator. 46 resident cases appeared in rows, each stamped human review completed, each approved between 3 o'clock and 3:03 in the morning by the same account. No employee name.
No signature.
No recorded call. Just a machine certifying that another machine had been questioned. Edward Sloan's image remained frozen on the screen for half a second before the connection caught up. Administrative verification is an accepted control, he said, but the certainty had left his voice. Megan opened the system access report beneath it. This account cannot interview residents, inspect receipts, or exercise judgment. It was programmed to approve every file that met the risk threshold. She placed Malik's paid receipt directly beneath the rain-stained notice. The paper still carried Hearthstone's blue doorway logo. Above it, the company had written, "Access restriction." Below it sat proof that Hearthstone had received every dollar Malik owed. Rachel stepped closer to the evidence cart. The corridor lights reflected from the silver company pin she had removed from her coat. "Read the sequence," she told Megan. Megan did. Payment received at 5:14. Funds transferred to unverified cash risk. Resident access disabled at 6:18. False water damage request entered at 6:29. Turnover lock issued at 6:32. Kevin Price carried it upstairs at 6:41. Automated approval posted at 7:05. The hostile call recording belonged to another resident. The behavioral label was generated from the words daughter and medicine. No one interrupted. Kevin's hand hung empty beside the belt where his keys had been. Laura's leather folder slipped lower against her coat, its polished edge tapping once against the railing. Edward looked away from his camera as though another screen might offer an explanation the evidence had not already taken from him. Rachel lifted the notice from the cart. For a moment, the same logo existed in 3 places: the wet page in her hand, the pin beside the receipt, and the faded home starts her banner turned toward the wall. Then she walked to apartment 3C and peeled the remaining strip of tape from the door herself. "Malik Carter paid his rent," she said. Her voice was not loud, but the microphone carried it to every open doorway. "He did not threaten our staff. He did not use his daughter to manipulate anyone. My company received his money, removed it from his ledger, and replaced his character with a false record." Laura opened her mouth. Rachel raised one hand without looking at her. Edward designed the shortcut. Laura made it regional policy. Kevin used it on this door. She looked directly into the camera. And my signature allowed it to continue. Edward leaned forward. "Rachel, a public statement before council completes review could expose the entire portfolio. The residents were exposed first," she said. She ordered every RSI-related lockout and eviction action stopped immediately. All server logs, emails, recordings, payment bags, camera files, and maintenance records would be preserved. Residents, without a valid legal order against them, would have access restored. Kevin and Laura were suspended pending investigation. Edward was placed on administrative leave, his credentials locked, and the files referred to independent counsel and the appropriate authorities. Medical and temporary housing costs would be paid without requiring anyone to surrender the right to challenge Hearthstone. Every resident carrying an RSI 72 code would receive written notice before sunrise. Kevin's lips parted, but no words came. Laura lowered her eyes. Edward's screen showed only the side of his face. Rachel turned to Malik. "Your case will be corrected first." Malik stood in the open doorway, one hand holding the nebulizer tube, so it would not pull against Zoe's mask. He looked at the residents lining the corridor, some holding notices folded into quarters, others clutching envelopes they had been too ashamed to open in public. "Don't open only my door," he said. "Open every file this system closed." Rachel nodded. "We will." "Not quietly," Malik said. "In writing." The nebulizer released another soft mechanical breath. A drop of water fell from the railing to the concrete below. Somewhere inside 3C, Zoe shifted beneath her blanket and reached for her father's hand. Rachel asked, "What do you need tonight?" Malik looked down at his daughter before answering. "The records corrected. The doors opened safely, and every family called before morning. No one applauded. No one moved. The entire hallway went silent. Not because the CEO had spoken, but because the man who had been given every reason to demand a private miracle had chosen justice for people whose names he barely knew." Yet as Rachel looked at the ruined notice in her hand, she understood that admitting the truth was only the first human decision the company had made that night. The next one would belong to Malik. What would he do with the recognition and power that had finally arrived at his door? The hallway emptied without applause. Residents returned to their apartments carrying notices that no longer felt like private shame, while Megan photographed every page and sealed the broken K-4471 lock inside an evidence bag. Kevin surrendered his keys. Laura left with her access suspended. Edward's image disappeared from the monitor after independent counsel entered the call. Inside apartment 3C, Sophie removed Zoe's nebulizer mask only after the child could breathe without the faint whistle that had frightened Malik all night. Rachel stood outside the doorway and handed Malik a written order restoring his access, freezing every RSI action, and prohibiting anyone from altering his account. "This is temporary," she said. "The correction won't be." Malik read each line before signing acknowledgement. He did not thank her for returning something that should never have been taken. He simply asked, "Who is calling the other families?" By sunrise, staff under Megan's supervision had begun making those calls. 3 months later, the Resident Stability Index no longer existed. 46 cases had been reopened. Payments Hearthstone had received but hidden outside resident ledgers were restored. Incorrect balances were removed, credit reporting corrections were submitted, and families forced to relocate were offered independent choices: return, receive moving assistance, or pursue compensation without signing away their legal rights. Kevin's employment ended after investigators confirmed he had created the false water damage request and installed a turnover lock without lawful authority. Laura was dismissed for directing staff to hold cash payments outside the ledger and for using housing enforcement to protect performance targets and a corporate video. Edward lost his position, and the records connected to RSI were transferred to outside investigators for whatever civil, professional, or legal consequences the evidence supported. Rachel remained CEO under board supervision, but she lost unilateral authority over resident enforcement programs. Her performance compensation for the year was placed into an independently managed recovery fund. She did not call that sacrifice. She called it part of the bill. Malik received more than an apology. Hearthstone issued a corrected ledger, a letter confirming he had paid in full, a formal withdrawal of the false hostile contact report, and a written statement that neither Zoe's illness nor her request for medicine had constituted misconduct. On the old rain-stained notice, a new stamp crossed the blue company logo. Reversed, payment verified, resident record corrected. The paper that had once called him a risk now proved the system had been wrong. Malik accepted reimbursement for Zoe's medical care and the losses caused by the lockout. He refused Rachel's offer to appear in a new public campaign. Instead, he accepted a paid seat on an independent resident due process panel, but only after securing rules that required every enforcement decision to name the human being responsible, show residents the evidence being used against them, record cash payments immediately, and complete appeals before access could be restricted. He was not chosen because he had money, influence, or a hidden past. He was chosen because, When humiliation gave him permission to become cruel, he had remained careful. When he could have demanded one private exception, he had asked for 46 files to be opened. One rainy afternoon, Rachel returned to Riverside Gardens without cameras or assistance. The faint grease mark remained on the cuff of her cream coat. She helped Henry and Malik carry boxes into the apartment of an older resident who had been invited home after her record was corrected. No one photographed them. No one made a speech. At the community board, Zoe taped up a drawing of several blue doors standing open. Behind each one was a family. In one doorway, a small girl held a purple inhaler from the safety of her own living room. Beneath the picture, in careful 7-year-old handwriting, she had written, "Home means someone checked the truth." Rachel read it for a long moment. "I don't expect trust because we published a report," she said. Malik adjusted the damaged strap on his delivery bag. "Good. Trust isn't a press release." "Do you believe in second chances?" she asked. "I believe in the work after the apology," he answered. Outside, the rain softened against the glass. Malik held the lobby door while Rachel stepped through, then turned back to Zoe. She slipped her hand into his, and together they walked toward apartment 3C. Their own key opened the door without resistance. Malik placed the corrected receipt inside the clear plastic wallet beside Zoe's spare inhaler. For a few quiet seconds, neither of them spoke. This silence held no fear and no shame. It was the sound of a child knowing the adults had finally done their job. Malik's kindness had never purchased justice. It had simply kept his dignity intact until the truth was strong enough to open every door.